in here, and I wanted to get this up and rolling. I'm Todd Alford. Today I wanted to kind of change up the way that we've done some of these series. We've done a lot of things where it's a deep dive into something specific, and I wanted to go in and show everybody, kind of a whole training series of things, starting from geometry and then working our way through the tasks. I've been a long-time CFD support specialist, been doing it for about 8 years. Also, fun fact for the guys that don't know too much about me, I'm a retired water polo monster. Played water polo for a couple years in college, got a national championship out of it. And I brought a new face with me here, my buddy James Youmatz. James, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, thanks for having me today, Todd. So pretty much I'm the complete opposite of Todd, where I know nothing about CFD at all. So I'm really hoping that this will be an enjoyable webinar for you guys, because we'll be able to show off some of the basics, and I can show you guys, since I'm technically a CAD expert, I will be able to show you guys some CAD techniques that I think will be useful. Me and Todd have talked about to on CFD.
All right. So the first thing I kind of want to kick off with is just learning about a little bit about how you guys do with your, how you deal with geometry. So let me kick off this poll. Really just trying to find out how much you guys have that you're involved in. If you touch the CAD at all, if you don't touch it at all, really, how much control you have over the geometry going into CFD, because once we get into CFD, the geometry handling is very limited. Wow. Show you guys how this is showing out. I am surprised kind of how this is coming. Let's see, we've got 76% voted. I'm going to close out the poll in another 15 seconds here, just to see if anybody else is still making their decisions. All right. I'm going to close this guy and show you guys how this came out. It looks like most of you actually create all of your CAD yourselves, so maybe this will be very, very useful. And then there's a few people that don't touch the geometry at all, which is kind of how I deal with things. I punt everything over to James when somebody sends me something and I don't know what I'm doing with it. So yeah, the overall, you should be able to get some ideas of what needs to be done so that you can communicate things better, and hopefully we'll get some tricks for everybody that really needs this as part of their workflow.
Perfect. So, there's just a few things that I want to talk about with the CAD, and it's really cool to see that everyone, a majority of people make it themselves. Like Todd said, really it's kind of a surprising result that we got, that a lot of people make it themselves. So I'll try to keep it engaging for all parties involved when I do some demonstrations. Sorry, Todd, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No worries. That's why we're here. All right. So really and I'm still sharing the poll. Let me hide that guy. All right. So really what we're going to go through today, there's two big things from a geometry discussion that I really want to hit. What is the simulation geometry and how do we make it? Getting things prepared and simplified, characterized. There's a whole bunch of words to use that are all relatively saying the same thing. Getting that geometry ready for CFD. And then there's the piece that's missing. How do we get the fluid? What should we do? Because, we're here for fluid dynamics, And if I get geometry from somebody else, it's never had a fluid in it. So kind of talking about, and also this becomes a problem for some people when we don't get that void fill, or we don't get some of the things to happen. So that's going to be the second topic that we really hit on. So the first thing about simulation geometry is just getting rid of any unnecessary surfaces and edges. You know, all of this plays a role downstream. It's going to make your model heavier, harder to rotate and view things, and it's not going to add a lot of value for what you're looking at for results. So, you know, things you're always going to want to remove: bolts, holes, threads, grooves, O-rings, you know, just trying to make it so that we get rid of a lot of those things that really aren't going to make a difference. You know, on top of that, probably rounds and things like that. If you're working in electronics models, serial numbers, like I have shown here on the left, there's a little serial number on a complex part, and it looks like it's made out of sheet metal. That's something you always want to avoid because of the small curvatures and gaps that get left behind. It's better to delete those. You know, at least I find it easier to delete those parts and just recreate them as more of a simplified block kind of thing. You know, I also have over on my electronics model here the pins that are protruding through the board. Those aren't necessary for CFD. You know, that's because we put together an assembly of some complex parts. Always remove all of those just fine details that really aren't going to affect the flow and heat transfer. When we're looking at AEC models, something that I see fairly commonly, because if somebody makes something up in Revit, you've got all these details for something that's going to be a beautiful building, but you want to simplify walls down to being blocks. In this model, you can see that I have like the window panes and, you know, moldings for the doors. This is pretty simplified, but we can take it even further by just having the wall and a piece of glass there. You know, it's really getting things to its bare bones, because all of those small features are going to hurt us down the road. And spending the extra resources on details that we don't need can just kill us in simulation. The time spent in the CAD pays huge dividends downstream. And on that note, I'm going to let James give us a little bit of a presentation here.
Perfect, Todd. Thank you. Now, while I get that set up, I just want to remind everyone that you do have a chat bar and questions that you can ask me. You know, just let me know. You know, if there's anything you want me to clarify more, or anything that you you know, you have any questions about.
James, I'm not. Oh, there it goes.
Perfect. It seems like a lot of you guys have used CAD before, which is great. So I'm hoping that none of this is new to you guys. But, you know, for those that it is new, hopefully you learned something here, and hopefully I can teach you all a little something about SimStudio tools.
And we chose SimStudio tools, sorry to butt in here, James, just because we know all of you have it. A lot of these functions are available in other CAD packages as well. But we know that this is a common platform because it came with the installation of CFD.
Yeah, and I'd only really just started to begin using SimStudio tools. Now, I use Fusion 360 as my CAD package, and SimStudio tools is based off the same platform as Fusion 360. So it's really a neat kind of tool that I'm definitely a little biased towards. But again, I've found it to be a really helpful tool, and what might take me a few hours to build, SimStudio tools takes about 30 seconds to destroy everything that I've built. So since most of you guys are CAD people, you can probably appreciate some of the time that it's been. So one of the first tools that I want to show is really the Simplify menu. So again, just working on the ribbon left to right, you'll see the Simplify menu. In here, there's tons of useful features. For example, this Remove Features command. Now this is really neat if you haven't seen this before, because all you have to do is click it and you get brought up a menu where you can select your bodies, and you'll notice you can filter through features such as fillets, holes, chamfers, extrudes, and revolves. And I won't choose the whole model as a whole just for time basis. That might take a little bit of time for it to calculate. So what I'll do is I'll actually go ahead and just isolate a component for now and work with that just to show you how the tool works a little bit. So I'll go ahead and choose this, and you'll notice when I click it, over to the left, it highlights what component that is. You'll notice the blue dotted line under it. So go ahead and click this component, and I'll right-click it and scroll down to isolate. I'll isolate that component. Now I'll just work with this one a little bit. Might speed the process up and kind of demonstrate what I'm trying to talk about a little bit better. So we'll go ahead and use the remove features on this, and I'll window select, which pretty much is just I left click and drag and select all the faces in that. Now you'll notice they light up as different colors. Now this is really cool, and you'll notice as I increase the feature size, it's allowing me to delete more of the features that are a little bit smaller on that, and if I decrease it, I'm obviously filtering out less features. So we'll keep it right in the middle for now. And this manual features tab just means I can go in and click something that I see might not be highlighted. So for example, you can see that this hole right here isn't highlighted, but we'll leave that for now just for demonstration purposes. So I'll go ahead and click delete, and realistically, it's probably, not all features will be able to remove from this part. Now this is a common occurrence, and you really shouldn't worry if you get this error message. It's going to happen. Pretty much what that means is that some Studio tools couldn't calculate what would happen if it had to delete that part. So for instance, I do believe that that error occurred because it was going to delete this face, but it wasn't going to delete the whole, which, realistically you do. But this is actually a good opportunity to show that SimStudio makes it really easy to delete things. So you'll notice all I have to do is click the hole, and I'll go ahead and press the delete key, and it's gone.
That's my favorite.
Yeah. No, just be careful. You can get into trouble using that, especially with the delete key. It's definitely an order of operations kind of thing. You can't. You sometimes have to click things in the right order to get to work with the delete key. So I really recommend using the simplify menu, even though Todd doesn't like to listen to that. But so we'll go ahead and undo the isolate now, so we can see the whole model again. And one of the next things that I kind of want to show off is the next feature in the menu, which is the remove faces, I believe it's called. Yep, remove faces. So what this does is it kind of chain selects faces. So you'll notice here on this part of the model we have, I believe that's a switch. Not an expert on these circuits, but what we'll do is, we'll click a face and we'll use the delete key. So this is what I was talking about with you can't always just press the delete button. So the selected faces cannot be deleted. Now this isn't a problem. Again, I'll go ahead and isolate this component. You just click on it, and you can look in the browser window, and you'll go ahead and we can isolate this. Now, the reason I'm isolating it is I personally like to isolate it just because that way I know if I'm clicking something, I'm not accidentally clicking a different component. Especially when we're deleting things, you don't want to accidentally delete a different component. Again, this is just a workflow that I personally like to use, so I don't feel.
Good tip, James.
Yeah, don't feel compelled to have to, but definitely, and I'll give you a better example in a little bit. But we'll go ahead and we'll use the Remove Faces tool here. We'll go ahead and click this switch now, and you'll notice it all lights up. It all lights up in red, indicating that it selected, I believe that's the 10 selected faces, and it chain select the whole thing. Go ahead and hit delete, and that's gone. So that's another useful little feature that I like to use. It kind of guesses as to the whole part you're trying to remove, and it'll be able to select your geometry based on what it can heal. So, and again, a little tip to that is if it shows up in an odd color like a red or a green or an orange, that's usually a good indicator that it worked correctly. If it shows up in like the default blue like you clicked it, usually it means it's not working 100%, but it most likely will still work. So we'll go ahead and undo this isolate, and we'll get this back. And the next things that I kind of want to show is we'll isolate this board right here, and we'll go ahead and show a few different things here. So isolate. And now you'll notice this is made up of a lot of different bodies in it, but technically, according to the component, it's just one body. So for instance, Todd, actually, I guess, this coming from the CFD guy, when you see this board, what would you like to change about it?
So we've got these little small parts that, they look like an LED or a resistor of some sort. So we actually have materials in CFD that can do the math for that as a simple block. Rounded surfaces are hard to mesh. So when I have something small like that, I really want to be able to make that into just a small cuboid volume. You know, the detail for each one of those, they're probably going to be different materials, and you know, we would get something like this where all the components are dropped into, you know, or all the bodies are put into one component if we were importing geometry, which is where I believe this came from. So they shouldn't be the same part. So let's, can you break those into different bodies and then we'll work from it?
Sure. Just to demonstrate, I guess what Todd is saying here is, you know, you don't need that extra geometry on the dome right here. And what you can do is in the simplify menu, you can go with replace with primitives to create a, you know, a different shape, just something a little simpler, not a lot of edges. But you'll notice that since this is one complete body, when I go to replace with primitives, it treats it all as the primitive, and it's trying to create a body based around the whole thing. So there are a few ways we can work around that if you just want to target the individual piece of geometry. And this is to actually split the body based on a work plane. So in the modify menu under split, you'll notice we have split body, and it just creates a new body by dividing the selected body. And we'll go ahead and we'll click body right here, which is this body one. And for my splitting tool, like it said, you can use anything, and you'll notice here I have the origin of it. What I'm going to use is this top face of the board, and what this will do is it'll split everything along that, and you'll notice a big red you know, line, which is pretty much showing you where it's going to split. And if we hover over it right there, you can notice it's going to split everything across that. And just pay attention right here when I click OK, and you'll notice a lot of bodies were created because of that. Now they're all individual bodies. So we'll go ahead and target one of these. You said they're LEDs, you think?
LEDs or something along those lines, but I'm pretty sure we've got a part that can make that easier once we're into CFD. And you know, when we go through the subsequent set of these, I'm going to do one for materials and boundary conditions. So we'll do a deep dive into some of this stuff later. But
yeah, definitely. And so yeah, we just go back into the simplify menu and click replace with primitives. And when we click it, you'll notice that it turns into a rectangular shape just because I chose a box shape, but you can change it to whatever one you want. You can change the size. So we'll go ahead and click OK, and now you have a simpler geometry that when you bring it into CFD, you can assign it as if it was an LED, for an example.
Yep.
And just the final thing while we have this isolated is, for example, maybe you don't want this in CFD. You're like, wow, this part means absolutely nothing to me. I hate it. I'm sure some of you, well, most of you, according to the poll, are familiar with a suppress feature. This is also in the simplify menu. So we'll go ahead and click this, and we'll find which body this is. It looks like it's body 3. So go into the simplify menu, and we will press suppress. And now it is removed from that, so when we go to bring it into CFD, and you can tell it's suppressed by the fact that it has a line through it. When we bring it into CFD, this part won't exist. And I'm speculating here with the fact that the part won't exist. Is that correct, Todd?
that is correct. And I think a lot of people probably do use that. And it actually used to not be available. I've used SimStudio since it was a beta. So that is actually a function that was added in later because they didn't realize how important it was. So that's great that you see the value in it as well, James.
Yeah, perfect. And one of the final things that I want to show here is just kind of demonstrate why I like to isolate things. So you'll notice here we have, you know, a number written on the side of this piece. This is completely useless for any sort of simulation purposes. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and window select. But you notice how much stuff just got highlighted in blue? If I hit delete, I'm deleting way more than I need to. So by isolating this component, and I just got to find it. It's going to be the tricky part when you have a lot of components. Isolate it. Now I go to hit the delete, and it only deletes what I needed to delete. So that's just a useful trick that you can use just to make sure that you're not accidentally deleting some piece. And on something this complex, you accidentally delete it. It might take a long time to kind of find your mistakes. In conjunction with that, another thing I like to use is in the inspect menu. And I'm hoping this one wows you because I got a feeling some of you guys have seen a lot of what I just showed before. I'm hoping this one might be a little new. I know when I showed Todd, it kind of blew his mind. It's component color cycling toggle. When you turn this on, it actually colors all of your different components, so you really know what's part of the same component folder and what's not. And some of you might think it's useful, some of you might not, but again, it's just a helpful way to kind of visualize what's going on in your model.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic visualization. It can definitely help you if you're looking at just a monster model when everything's all gray. I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's all I had to show you really for the Simplify. Like I said, that's quick, and even in that 10 minutes we spent demonstrating, I was able to remove a lot of these parts and really get this a lot closer to being simulation ready. Todd, was there anything else that you saw that you wanted to demonstrate?
Let's show the, I know this is another one James doesn't like, but occasionally when you're doing some internal flow things, you'll have several parts of like the stem of a valve or something like that where we don't really need them to be separate parts, so we need them to be, why not make them the same volume so that we can just suppress it once we're into CFD? Can you show us how to combine some of the things that we just broke apart?
Sure. Now this can be a little finicky, so bear with me if I don't get it the first time. But yeah, so in the Modify menu, there's actually a Combine tool, and what it does is you can actually select two bodies that are combined, and you can join them together into one body. So again, this is kind of hard to do. So if I click that as my body, you'll notice that I selected the board. That is my target body, and for the tools, I want to select. I'm hoping I don't have to select everyone, but it's just on the option if I do. We'll hit join. Oh, now you'll notice when I go back into the component folder under body, I only have the one body again. So that's just a useful thing. Again, if you don't want to have, right now we have what, 19 components, and if you don't want to have just a terrible mess of things, it's a good way to just kind of keep everything organized and as one body.
Yeah, it can definitely help with some things. And then I'll show a little bit of what happens when we go into CFD. But so these are some quick tips of how to really get your geometry simplified a little bit pretty quick. Hope everybody finds a little bit of value in that. James, I'm going to steal over being the presenter. We're going to hop back into PowerPoint here for a very quick second.
Not a problem. And again, people, please feel free to use the questions in the chat bar if you feel you want me to explain on anything.
So now, the big thing that we all know we're missing whenever we have geometry that's come from production or anywhere else, we need to get the fluid. So the geometry tools is the only real option that we have within CFD to get that fluid in there. And I think a lot of people, I've at least seen a fairly common practice of it, and it's just very limited. This was actually designed back in 2008, and at the time it was a wow feature, and I think it's really awesome, but we have so much more power in CAD that I think there are some of the things there that we just should leverage versus using the geometry tools. We can create the fluid ourselves, which, yeah, it's not hard if we're doing pipe flow, because I know how to extrude a cylinder. But when we get into a complex model, it's very difficult to get that fluid volume. What we can do is cap it in, cap our inlets and outlets, make airtight cavities, and then as soon as we come into CFD, CFD will automatically create the fluid volume for us. So just to show you guys, I've got a model here. Probably looks familiar to a lot. This is one of our tutorials that I've launched into CFD, and I've actually modified the geometry a little bit as well. But here, just to show off, we have the option for the void fill, where if we have a planar surface, we can select the edges going around it and build a surface and then fill the void. So what that'll do is create a volume in that void. The other option that you have, if you're doing external aero, we can go into the external volume and we can make ourselves a wind tunnel, or if we were doing external natural convection, we can get all of our dimensions just by dragging the sliders or changing any of the values in the table. And then we just hit create, and we've got the volume. So here's something that I wanted to really show you guys with something simple, is if we look over in the design study bar, there's these two created volumes. And these are really what we created by using the geometry tools. It gets listed as CFD created volume. There's also this volume that shows up, and this was created because this is actually an airtight gap. Everything else came in as component, with the exception that I have this chip that I had modified, and I also have the board that I left. And what I did here was I just extended this chip so that it intersected with the board, and the intersection gets created as another volume. This can cause all kinds of problems if this is a very minute thing. And there's interference detection tools in every CAD product. But one of the things that people might not know is when you see, oh man, I've got all these sliver pieces when I hid the things because my mating wasn't correct. If you've got it launched into CFD, the naming convention for that part that gets created actually tells you the part name underscore U underscore part name of the parts that it's interfering with. So we know that chip 1 underscore U or underscore U underscore board is created from an interference between the chip and the board. So there's some little tips for once we've got the geometry into CFD, things that we can kind of use to diagnose what's happening with our geometry. And on that note, I'm going to kick it back to James, and he's going to show us another model here.
Perfect. Thanks, Todd. And we do have a few questions that just came in, so I'll answer those to the best of my ability. There's one that's definitely for Todd. That's definitely a Todd question, definitely based on CFD. But can everyone see my screen okay? Perfect. So let me just address the first question that Ahmed came in and said, how do you move to and from CFD in Sim Studio? Now that, and just to check, you can see my screen, correct?
Yep.
Perfect. So
about to demo that, right?
Yeah, I will demo that, but just to answer your question quickly in case, for any reason you have to go, you just go to the add-ins and you click Simulate CFD Flex, and it'll shoot it over there. But like Todd just said, I'll go ahead and demo that in a little bit. The other question that we have from Scott, when you simplified the LED, could you have done multiple selects, all the LEDs, and perform the operation? Or maybe there is a repeat function. Now, I do believe that there is a repeat function, but there is also a multiple select, and I will demonstrate that real quick. Let me see if I can undo that combine first. And again, I think they have to be grouped in order to do that, but for example, if I went like this, and I went modify, and this is a learning experience for me too. I haven't tried it yet, so we'll see. Oops, not modify.
Yep.
Simplify.
You want to go in the simplify and then...
Yeah, so I was trying to make a box when you do it like that, but for instance, if I went simplify, replace with primitives, okay, I click this, right click, and you'll notice after you right click, up here there's a repeat replace with primitives. So always when you right click in Sim Studios, the last command you did will be that top. And honestly, this brings up a good point. The whole Fusion Sim Studio platform is kind of based around ease of mobility in your package. So when you right-click, you're always going to have some of your most basic commands, which is like press, pull, hold, and then the sketch options. And again, so you can just right-click, repeat, replace, and then you click it, and it'll...
So one thing I wanted to point out, can you bring that dialog box back up, James?
The right click?
No, the replace with primitives. So I think this might be more about what Scott was asking. So there's that replace all occurrences. What that does, if you have a part, usually in an assembly, again, this came from an imported thing, so it doesn't see these bodies as being the same kind of component. But a lot of times when you're making an assembly, you've brought in that same LED to all of the locations. And I've actually had a model where I did this before, and there were 40 LEDs, but they were all the same part. They were just patterned. So I do that, replace all occurrences, and then when I hit OK, it changed all 50 of the LEDs at the same time. So when you have geometry that is a little bit better built, then that will help out substantially. Hope that, nice.
Perfect. All right, and then there's one final question from Mike, and I believe this is definitely going to be a Todd question. Will you discuss the merits or unmerits, if that's even a word, of mesh regions versus CAD domain parts for mesh assignment?
Mike, that's definitely a question more for when I get into talking about the meshing line, but I'll try and give you a fairly basic answer now. You can create volumes that are extra air that we can modify the mesh specifically on that region, and the regions that are available in CFD, they're limited to what the shape can be, and the control on them isn't quite as nice as if you create them using CAD. Very good question, and I will make sure that that is a decent talking point when I do my meshing discussion. If you want to talk about that further, Mike, you can ping in support, and I'd be more than happy to spend some more time on it.
Perfect, and we got some great responses. It's really good to see everyone involved in the question window. So yeah, let's go over to our next model, which is just a valve. You'll notice that there's an inlet here, and a hole here. What I can start with first is just kind of showing the simplify stuff, and I'll go a little quick just because we spent a lot of time on that. We'll go ahead and use the Remove Features tool. I'll window select, which is just left click and drag all my bodies, and you'll notice, see, this is a really good example where it shows what it highlights. And when I move this around, you'll notice it selects or deselects more stuff. So I'm going to actually cancel that just in case I messed anything up. We'll do the Remove Features again. We'll select it, and I just like to leave it at default for this model. I played around with it a little bit, and default seems to work pretty well. So we'll go ahead and delete that. You'll notice some stuff won't be able to get deleted. Oh, thinking. Yes, which makes sense again. It couldn't heal those threads. So we'll go in and manually delete those. We'll go back in here. We'll go into the Simplify menu, Remove Faces. We'll click. And it's thinking. Moving slow today, computer. All right, and we'll get rid of that one. And we'll go in and click the, ooh, that's the wrong one. Go in and click that. There we go. And we'll hit delete. And yeah, so that was a good example of just pay attention to what you're clicking. I almost deleted a lot more than I really needed to right there because the Remove Faces chain selects things. So right now I got rid of my threads, I got rid of that, and up here I'm just going to get rid of just that kind of offset here. So we'll click all three faces because that'll go ahead and delete the thing fully. And that was a good example of the kind of, you have to chain select things correctly in order to use that, just the manual delete key. So now we just have kind of a plain geometry valve. And Todd, I guess this is a good time for you to chime in. We're trying a little something new here where he's going to actually have me demonstrate this in CFD.
Yeah.
So what would you like me to do here, Todd?
All right. So, I showed how we can, what we could do of creating caps for once we're in CFD, and those caps are all going to be aligned to the surfaces. Can you cap off this geometry so that CFD could automatically generate the volume?
Sure.
Make it airtight.
And just to check, CFD can only use surfaces and solid bodies, correct, as caps?
Correct. We cannot use planes.
Okay. So what I'll go ahead and do is just to demonstrate on this first side is probably one of the more simpler tools. And when I say simple, I mean simple. When you go into Create, all you have to do is go down and click Patch. And a patch is just a 2D representation of a surface. That's what we're looking for. The surface.
Solid surface.
So pretty much has no thickness, but it does act as a surface. So we'll go ahead and click patch, and you'll notice I'll go and click the circumference, and watch this. It's done. It completely patched it. Now this is because it had the full circumference around it. It could guess where it had to go. So patches don't always work perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead and show you another method of kind of filling this hole. And I'll use solid bodies here. So for anyone that, again, a lot of you had CAD experience, so I won't get into this too much, but I'm going to go ahead and create a sketch here, which is just I'm going to draw. So now what I'm going to do is select this space right here because that is coplanar with everything that I'm trying to sketch on. I'll go into the sketch menu and click create sketch. And again, if you remember from before, you can right click and you have your quick options in there. And in here, there's a couple of neat things we can do. Obviously, you can go into the circle, click center diameter circle. It snaps, since I have the snap option selected, snaps to the center of that circle, and it snaps to the circumference. And you'll notice that if I hide the body, I now have my circle created. We'll go.
I'm going to throw up a quick warning in here, just because this works in SimStudio tools, but for some geometry, like if you're working in Pro E, I know that sometimes the tolerances will be off, and then you might not get the void fill. So that one always scares me. But go on, James. Good idea.
No, definitely, and I agree. Sketching on surfaces, now this is a completely flat surface where you can kind of guess where the geometry is going to be. So this is a good example of one where sketching would be easy. But sketching is not always going to be easy. So again, try. The unfortunate thing about CAD, and I guess the fortunate thing, is that there's a million ways to do just one task. So the other that I want to demonstrate here, and some of you might have noticed that this is a purple line, and I'll explain that in 2 seconds. So SimStudio actually can project your geometry onto your sketch plane. So you'll notice now I'm going to try to project. And we have a question real quick, Todd, just following up about the tolerance thing that you had while I set up the projection. Let me just finish my thought real quick.
Yep.
So you'll go in and you'll go into the sketch. You'll notice that you can project right here, project. And this is kind of in the way. That's a little annoying. And we'll project this surface onto my current sketch. And you'll notice now that I now have the 2 sketches without having to draw it. It just actually projected the front of this as well as the whole onto my sketch plane, and you'll notice that it's selectable. So we'll go ahead now and end my sketch. And a sketch is not a surface, so don't get that confused. You can't actually do anything with sketches. It just exists. You actually have to make it 3D if you want to do anything and make it a solid. So here's a quick little example that I like to prove, which is the press pull. This is a really neat feature in SimStudio that, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it's kind of unique. And pretty much for those of you that are familiar, it's an extrusion, it's a fillet, it's a chamfer, it's all of that in one. It's an offset. But what it does is it's a smart selection. So because I selected a face, when I press pull, it's going to actually bring up the extrude menu as so. If I was to select a line, for instance, like an edge up here, it would want to do a fillet. Or on this hole, it would try to chamfer it. So it's really just, it's kind of a smart and quick tool. And again, you can just pull this line. You don't really have to type anything if you want to. And if you go in, it turns into a cut, which is indicated by the red. But anyway, we want a cap, so we'll pull it out. And you'll notice now it's a gray body. I set the operation to new body to create a new body. And we'll go ahead and cap it. Now, Todd, did you have an answer to the question?
So essentially there, for talking about the tolerances, Pro E has just massive tolerance and capability, and it's because of how powerful the tool is. But there's both model tolerances and part tolerances, and if those are off, then and it doesn't have to be off by much. It can be off by 1,000th of a millimeter, and all of a sudden we're in trouble in CFD. I don't want to dive too much into that because we're running a little bit slow here, but we again, that's another one. Feel free to reach out, and we can have a further discussion.
Perfect. Yeah, and on that note, I'm going to just try to speed this process up. So we'll go ahead in the Create menu. We'll just make another patch for this top one. I will show you guys another unique little tip in a little bit, but for now, we'll just go ahead and make this a patch. Okay. And again, hopefully you guys remembered and was watching earlier when I used the split body. And I'm going to go ahead and I want to split all of those bodies that I created. And with the splitting tool, I actually want to go ahead and select, I'll hide this body so you can see it better. Well, kind of better. You can see the origin has the 3 origin planes based around it. And I want to, since this is based around the origin, split it right down the middle this way to create some symmetry in CFD to kind of ease this up. And you'll notice it'll split it right down the middle. I hit OK. Now I have 2 bodies. And I'll go ahead and turn that one on. And in my folders, some of this is just searching, so I'm going to turn that off. We're going to turn that off and that off. And you'll notice that now I only have half. And I believe, Todd, all I have to do is cap this back wall, and we should be good to bring it into CFD, correct?
Yep. You can do that real easy because we don't need it to be perfect. We can have a cap that's bigger because we'd essentially just suppress this once we got it in.
Yep. So what I'll do is I just created a sketch on this face, since that's coplanar, and make a rectangle that's pretty big. I'll close my sketch. I will select all the entities, use press pull to extrude it, and make our back wall. Now, one thing that Todd just mentioned that I kind of forgot to do, by clicking the light bulb to actually turn the visibility on and off, that doesn't mean I actually did anything with the parts. So I actually have to go in here and manually suppress these. So suppress, 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 and then suppress. So now we need to throw this into the CFD, correct?
Yep, I think so.
So to answer Ahmed's question earlier about how you throw it in a CFD, you just go into the add-ins up here and simulate in CFD Flex. We'll bring it in. We'll hit launch. And it's thinking. It's coming up. And here it is. And we just click merge.
You don't need to do that. Just,
Don't have to do that.
Nope.
All right, and I wasn't kidding when I said it's probably my 3rd time opening CFD.
Yep.
So you'll notice that, yep, there's our model. And, all right, Todd, where's the inner void?
You're going to have to hold down Control and then hit the middle mouse button on the back wall, the rectangular block, and spin her around.
And there it is.
Boom, already there. And you can see that it was done in the output bar as well. There was one additional part generated.
Yep, perfect. All right, so that's one way you can do it. Now, me being a CAD guy, I'm going to show you how to do it in CAD. I'll show you how to do it in SimStudio. And this is another useful trick that SimStudio has up its sleeve.
And we got a CAD punk showing off.
Yep. So I'll go ahead and undo those steps because, well, theoretically, I don't really need the half. It's not that big a deal for me as a CAD guy. You can get the half of the inner void anyway after. So here we go. So we have all our caps. I'm actually going to do something bold here. I'm going to delete, delete, delete. And I'm going to show how I quickly like to make our inner void. Now, I click this face, and I go into the construct, and I like to click offset plane. And what this does is just creates a plane based on your geometry. And when I click that, you'll notice I can offset it a distance. But if you actually click 0 and create a 0 offset, it's flush with that surface. So I'll go ahead and do that for all 3 of the surfaces that have holes. And again, this is just the command up here. Let's click construct offset plane.
You can grab it directly from the ribbon.
Yep, you can do that too. Or you can right click, repeat offset plane.
Yep.
Okay, so now I have 3 planes that plugged up completely. In the create menu, you'll notice that there's a fluid volume tool, which is very cool in my opinion. And with this as the tools for the, or actually, hold on, we want to create internal volume. Tools, we're going to select this body. And don't worry about that yet because we haven't finished selecting everything. And we'll select that plane, which closes it, that plane, which closes it, and finally that plane, which closes it. We'll go ahead and click, ooh, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I went a little quick there, and unfortunately I didn't get to show the menu, but I'll bring that back up in a sec. And you'll notice in here, I'll hide that body, and I'll hide my construction planes, and there you go.
So, James, when you got this, I would prefer that you extend. So could you do a pull on the faces that are the end of the volume?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So unfortunately, you can't do that with your sketch plane. You got to go back a little bit until we
Yeah, where you've got that with the internal volume, you can do it.
Oh, you're asking
pull
with
the end
internal.
of the with the internal volume. I just want you to extend that because the caps do it automatically. But
so we'll just click that and we'll hit press pull. And again, see, I believe this is going to work, but we'll try. Oh, see, this is a little directional one, so this one's going to be a little tricky. But again, I can show you how to do that using some different tips and tricks.
You should be able to do it. Maybe extrude?
Yeah, let's try extrude.
So the reason that you want to do this is because if there's any recirculation around a face, that can cause us divergence. It also, for the edges where we're going to be, if this was a model with heat transfer, if I have a temperature boundary condition that the outside of the surface I'm applying it to is actually touching the solid body, then I'm going to have an artificial conducting from that outside edge of my surface. So I always want my fluid volumes to be extended away from my solid bodies.
And again, that was good on Todd for catching that, where the press pull actually brought up the offset faces, which continues trying to create the same direction that it was making. So in this, you just go in and you manually click the extrude. That's all you had to do in that situation, and you create just a longer end right there. Now, I guess the final thing I want to show, and again, this is just showing off a little bit, but again, neat tool, is we'll go ahead and undo these, and undo. And we're back with these. And what I'll do now is I'm going to show you really, I guess, where the fluid volume tool stems from. Now, this is a command called boundary, which is really the same thing, but you can kind of see how the computer's functioning when it does this. This will be the last thing I demonstrate, so I don't take up too much of your guys' time today. And boundary fill can be used to be cut or join models. In this case, I'm going to use the join. So I'll select the body again. You notice stuff's turning green. It's creating what's called a cell. Select that, I'll select that cap, and I select that cap. And in my cell, you'll notice that there's this inner green one, which is kind of hard to select. There you go. And that was just something I did really quick. If you hold the left mouse button, it brings up these folders where you can kind of select things a little more easy. So that's the outer body, and this is the inner body, which will be created. So when I collect that cell, you'll notice it highlights the inner cell, which this looks strikingly familiar to the create volume tool, and or the fluid volume tool. And I just wanted to show that this is kind of where it stems from, and they make it a little easier to see what's going on with this tool. So I just wanted to show you guys that, and you can go ahead and do that. And when we hide our original body, we are left with the solid here.
Perfect.
I guess, did you guys have any questions for us?
Let me hit these guys up with a quick poll because it's almost time to let them go here. I'm going to respect everybody's time and let you go on time. But one more question really that I want to give you guys is, did you find this useful? Is it good that I go through the rest of the series and hit all of the tasks? I tried to throw in some knowledge about more of the stuff in CFD. Clearly, this one kind of steps out of CFD. But, depending on your level, maybe you didn't learn too much. Just trying to gauge if this is a good series because I wanted to just keep rolling with this one. And what do we got? We got 64% voted. It's coming up. I will give everybody, I'll close this poll just over a minute. So we've got another we'll go another 15 seconds, and then I'll close out the poll and show everybody how we're doing. All right, so let me share back with you guys what everybody said. So it looks like relatively overwhelmingly you guys have at least come away with something, even if you didn't come up with too much. And then, yeah, we're pretty good that you guys want to see the rest of the series where we start really diving into more of the basic functions that are there in CFD, and just show you what you can do with all of it. I think a lot of people struggle to grasp the whole concept just because of how much is there. Few people said, yeah, I could have done without it. Sorry if you didn't come up with anything, but yeah, overwhelmingly, I think we did okay. So I'm going to hide that guy.
I didn't notice any final questions come in, so I'm assuming
we're doing okay with questions.
One just came in from David. When and how can I review the recording of this presentation?
I have to have that processed by somebody else, but I'm hoping that this will be up by the end of the week. Hold on a second. Let me snag back from James. We go back into here, show my screen. And, always reach back, look through the, if you haven't gone to a lot of these, there's, all of these are recorded and they're available on a website to view. They're all YouTube videos. Always reach out to us. If you see anything that you really feel like it should be in there, hit up the idea station. I'll also make this presentation, even though it's very small, I'll make it available. And you guys caught me on the last question. This link I will correct. It's going to actually be CFD 18 for the 18th video is where you can grab. Oh, that's the slide deck. If you've reached out to support before, I know at least all of my emails have the webinar link to it. Feel free to reach out if you're struggling to find it, but they're all available on YouTube.
And just real quick before we go, just because a few more questions popped in. Richard, thank you very much for attending. Juliana, yes, we are recording it, and that's what Todd was just saying, is it'll be up and available to watch in a little bit. And Mike, again, Mike said, a lot of tools I would never use, but I support any and all information you can share. Thanks so much. Thank you again, Mike, for attending. And Juliana had a couple follow-up questions with, is this CFD just for mechanical engineers, or are you planning to cover building spaces, energy, noise, and light?
We've already done one talking about the AEC, doing solar for AEC. For 2016, we actually bumped up the solar capabilities because we used to diffuse the solar going into a building differently, and we wouldn't show like the shadowing effects of the sun. Depending on the topics, these topics are relatively across the boards, which is why I wanted to show that AEC model earlier and just talk to it, because AEC, it's just as difficult. People have beams and all the structural elements of a wall, and that should be dropped down to just a single block. But yeah, I think this should apply to everyone in these. At least that's what I'm trying to get across in these next few kind of training seminars. And there are some that are specific to AEC. Hope that answers your questions.
And Juliana also had a follow-up with just asking if you could post the link in the chat bar.
To the things, let me escape out of here.
And, Juliana, just real quick, if you're still here, did that answer your question? Yep. Perfect. Thank you for attending so much. And Todd's working on getting the link for you right now.
Yeah, let me throw this link into the chat. So this is where the videos all are. If you guys want to watch this or any of our other ones, there's for the different products as well. I didn't mean to click on that one. But yeah, they go all the way back. I think the first one that we did was looking at results in CFD, although I can't seem to find that at the moment. Visualizing results, I think that was the first one. And there's things for meshing errors. These are all things done by all of the tech support people. So trying to get some of the knowledge out there that we feel people might want to see.
Awesome. So thank you guys very much. Oh, last one. Julian asks, why is subscription to videos not available? Are you talking about on YouTube? I do believe you can subscribe to the channel.
Maybe you would need to do the subscribe.
Oh, it's just her, she said.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure there's a subscribe button. But yeah, Julian, I hope it works for you. And again, if you can't subscribe, worst comes to worst, just favorite the link or something.
Yeah, and reach out to us if you're having problems. I can definitely we can spend some time to make sure that you've got all the resources that you need. I don't mind spending a few minutes on that. So feel free to toss in a support case, and I'll get you squared away. And on that note, I'm going to try and give everybody back a few minutes of your day. Thank you very much for joining us, and I hope to see you again next time.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.